Good evening. Our program will begin in just a moment. Good evening. Our program will begin in just a moment. Good evening, and welcome to Advocacy Anywhere, powered by the American Jewish Committee. Advocacy Anywhere is AJC's digital platform that enables you to engage with AJC's global expertise, content, and advocacy from wherever you are. Over the weekend, Hamas launched a brutal war against Israel, killing over 1,200 Israelis, injuring thousands, and holding over 200 hostage in Gaza. Joining us today to share the impact being felt on college campuses are members of AJC's Campus Global Board, Board President Abe Baker Butler, Executive Vice President Ryan Kasanoff, Vice President of Advocacy Lily Cohen, and Board Member at Large Eliza Ross. Moderating our conversation is AJC Director of Campus Affairs, Jeff Greenberg. After we hear from our guests, time permitting, we will take your questions. You may email your questions to questions@ajc.org, questions is plural, or you can use the Q&A feature in Zoom. Jeff, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everyone. It is great to be with you all, albeit under very trying circumstances. I know we are all really feeling exhausted, but it gives me a lot of hope and inspiration to be with you and to share these incredible messages from our top student leaders here at AJC, our Campus Global Board. These are incredible students from all around the world, and I want to go ahead and jump right into questions since we are limited on time. So the first one I'll direct over to you, Abe. This is a general question about what the last few days have looked like on your campus, and if you could share a little bit about the campus environment as we enter what is hard to believe, the Friday, the end of the week here. So please, Abe, take it away.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, AJC, for having us, for putting together this Zoom, and thank you to all of you for coming here to hear from us. So it's hard to believe that it's been a week since all of this began, because the situation on campus has not been all right. And when I'm speaking now, I'm not speaking just about my campus, I'm speaking about my campus and all that I've heard. Things are truly erupting. As Hamas made its atrocious attacks on Israel, Jewish students were grieving, but at the same time, Students for Justice in Palestine and other organizations on campuses, and including my campus, took that as an opportunity to, quote, celebrate the resistance. This has really created an explosive atmosphere, which I can talk about more. Last night, there were students walking around campus, roving the walkways, yelling, Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. This is the situation we're dealing with. And the thing that has been really striking for me and scary for me is the lack of moral clarity, both from adults, faculty, and from students on campuses. And it scares me.
Thank you, Abe. I'm so sorry to hear that. And I'm curious, Lily, you are at Northwestern, different part of the country. What's life like on your campus right now?
Yeah, I think we're really seeing two sides of it right now. On the one hand, I'm seeing the Jewish community come together in a way that I've really never seen before. We held a vigil on Monday night, and we had several hundred students in attendance, which is something that a lot of the Jewish professionals on campus who have been there for many, many years said that they've really never seen. And so it's comforting in a sense to know that there are so many students who are here for each other in a time that can feel so isolating. But at the same time, luckily, we haven't seen anything really erupt on campus yet. It's mostly been on social media for now, both with our Students for Justice in Palestine chapter, and we have a chapter of a human rights organization on campus that was, as Abe mentioned, celebrating the resistance, calling Hamas freedom fighters, which is very jarring to see from an organization that fights for global human rights, and yet there has been no mention of Hamas's terrorism or of the terror that they've inflicted upon Israel and upon the Jewish people. And so we're really seeing both sides of this on Northwestern's campus right now.
Thank you, Lily. Wow, that's jarring indeed. Ryan, how about you at American University?
Yeah, it's an understatement to say these past few days have been challenging. I think that being in DC, we're really the center, obviously the center of political life in the United States, and also people on campus are incredibly politically active. I've been really frustrated and outright disappointed by a lot of my peers and classmates who have not been condemning a lot of any of the violence perpetrated by Hamas. And I think that a lot of Jewish students on campus are feeling helpless and hopeless. It hurts our hearts that this violence is happening far from home, and yet Israel is still our home. And so I think one of the, silver linings of this is that students on AU's campus are finding ways to come together and finding ways to help and support our Israeli brothers and sisters. Certainly our SJP chapter is very active. Last night, they held a vigil and made signs for the martyrs, which is very, very alarming. We've definitely had a lot of good work though through a lot of our campus partners, which I'm very thankful for. But I'm truly worried about the next couple of days and a couple of weeks.
Thank you, Ryan. And Eliza, going back to the Midwest, can you share us a little bit about the University of Chicago campus?
For sure. I think something that has really struck me, I'll echo Lily's sentiments of we've definitely had the most action on social media. Thankfully, we have not yet faced any sort of demonstration on the SJP side of things. But I think the biggest thing that I'm seeing outside of the Jewish community, which is obviously feeling enormous sorrow and grief right now, probably the biggest thing that I'm seeing is apathy and ignorance, which are hugely, hugely concerning, because in addition to being apathetic and ignorant, people are also uninformed. And those things combined are leading to ultimately a condemnation of actions, crimes against humanity, which should just never, ever, ever be condoned under any circumstances.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Eliza. And I believe I see we have a special guest with us this evening, AJC CEO Ted Deutsch. Yes, there you are, Ted. Welcome. Would you like to give some brief remarks?
Sure, Jeff, thanks. And I'm really glad to join, and I'm really glad that I had a chance to hear from the four of you. I just want to be clear from where we sit and the work that we do. Everything that you describe is the focus of our response to this. The fact is, whether we are advocating with governments or we're advocating with diplomats, there's nothing that we do that's more important than making sure that our Campus Global Board and our students on campus are safe. And it is unacceptable, and this is a point that we've made in conversations with universities around the country, that at a moment when the community feels at risk, that the universities are unwilling, sometimes seemingly incapable of acknowledging that when there are student groups on campus who are celebrating murder and rape and torture and the kidnapping of civilians, that the universities have a responsibility to speak out, to set a tone for campus that shows that it's not acceptable for that to happen. Abe, the thought of people walking across the campus screaming Hamas, 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 a terrorist organization that's responsible for the deaths of over 1,000 Israelis, 1,300, 1,400, the number grows every day, with thousands of people injured. And at a moment when there are Americans held hostage, citizens of other countries from around the world held hostage, and without even recognizing that Americans have also been killed by Hamas, it is unacceptable to say the least. I just wanted to get on to tell you that we're doing everything we can to be helpful. Jeff, I know will lead this conversation after I get off, but we've got your back. We're really privileged at AJC to have the opportunity to work with really some of the finest student leaders in the world. And your leadership at this difficult moment is so important. It's so important for us, but it's so important for your fellow students. And it's really important because of the message that it sends to the rest of the world. As the Biden administration, the president himself, leaders from around the world have stood squarely on the side of humanity and civilized society and against terrorism, as we've all stood with Israel, your ability to lead on campus sends that message out as well. We will continue to work with you, for you, by your side, to lift up your voices, to make sure that you're heard, and to make sure that you're safe and continuing to do your extraordinary work as proud Jewish leaders that we know you are. So I just wanted to get on to share those words. I don't want to interrupt what I know will be a really meaningful and impactful conversation. And I look forward to visiting your campuses, to being engaged. I hope you'll reach out at any moment, anything I can do, obviously anything we can do to be helpful. We're here for you. Jeff, thanks for giving me the opportunity.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Ted. Really appreciate you joining us. And I really want to echo your remarks and just letting all of our viewers know that AJC really is here for you. The amount of emails, texts, phone calls, WhatsApps, Slacks, Teams, the messages are flying back and forth, and it's all because we are here to support. And I think that the main message I've been sending to students is, don't think that you're in this alone. We're all in this together, and we will get through this together. So thank you, Ted. And now going back to our questions, Ryan, this one's for you. Have you encountered situations where your Jewish identity or affiliation with Israel has led to sort of misunderstandings or tensions within students at your university, at American University?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges in general and specifically during this war so far is the misunderstanding that people have that Jews are a monolith and that we all feel the same way about these issues that are going on in our world. I've been sitting in classrooms before class starts and people are talking about what's going on, and because they know I'm Jewish, they automatically ask me. And generally I'm happy to answer, but I think that it's really challenging. Students, we often don't feel like we have all the right answers. And I know I've certainly been struggling to find the words to say this week. And I think in terms of tensions on campus, at AU specifically, we had a rally a couple of days ago, a pro-Israel rally, and the tensions were very, very physical and visceral. We had some students that were counter-protesting the pro-Israel rally and making some incredibly anti-Semitic comments. And I think I have talked to some of my Jewish peers, and a lot of them have taken off their Hamsa necklaces or their Star of David necklaces because they just don't feel safe on campus anymore. And it's really distressing and upsetting to hear this from my friends who are very openly proud to be Jewish, and yet, we're in a space where they have to hide their identity.
Thank you, Ryan. Lily, same question. How about any situations you've encountered where you feel like your Jewish identity or affiliation towards supporting Israel has led to tension or misunderstanding?
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot of that going on right now, but I also want to talk about the fact that, before this war started a couple of days ago, there was the before on campus. And so this has been an issue on my campus and on a lot of campuses for a long time. And I think a good example of this is that I like to say that our Students for Justice in Palestine chapter is usually fairly quiet, or at least was during my first 2 years here. And mostly the conversation or lack thereof on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict was dormant on campus. And then at times of tensions in the region, it would erupt. And last fall, it began erupting much more frequently and without really much prompting it. And the way that looked was Students for Justice in Palestine began painting from the river to the sea around campus wherever they found space. This was in the Student Center, on staircases, on our rock in the center of campus, which is a symbol of free speech for student groups to paint. And I got very fed up seeing this slogan that calls for the destruction of the state of Israel and its Jewish inhabitants. And I wrote an op-ed for our school newspaper, which was really at its core a love letter to my Jewish identity, talking about how much I love being Jewish, going to Shabbat dinner and services on Friday nights, and how, as a part of that Jewish identity, how important Israel is to me. And I talked about my Zionism, and I talked about all of the problems that I saw with the phrase "from the river to the sea." And unfortunately, in response, students not only took to Twitter to attack my character and really spread lies about what I was saying in my article and about who I am as a person, but some students also put together a banner of 40 copies of my article, hung it on the center, up in the center of campus in front of the library, and had painted "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free" in red paint on top of it. And this was one of the most public ways that I have seen this really erupt on campus, the direct targeting of a student and a student's words. And, first and last names being used on Twitter when talking, it was no longer just talking about campus Zionists anymore. It was Lily Cohen. And so that definitely kind of showcases how this issue on Northwestern's campus has only progressed over the past couple of years, which makes things very concerning right now for Jewish and Zionist students.
Thank you, Lily. Abe, I saw you sort of shaking your head in agreement there when Lily talked about this being an issue on campus before, this weekend's start of this godforsaken conflict. Abe, do you mind sharing a little bit about what that has looked like for you at Yale?
Yes. So before this, it was a lot of the traditional BDS kind of activity on campus, which was damaging for a variety of reasons. But our campus really, I don't think it felt, things feel newly personal this week. That's what I'm trying to say. The fact that our community was grieving as Yalees for Palestine and others were celebrating those deaths really took a lot of people back. And that has been really challenging to watch. I do want to highlight though some bright spots despite the challenges of these past few days, if that's okay, Jeff.
I think we can all use a little bit of light these days, please.
So one thing is, I want to thank our president and administration, President Saleh, who released a very strong statement that condemned Hamas's terrorist attacks. I also have seen our community come together in ways that I never thought possible. Jews are spending more time at Hillel than ever before, feeling very connected to their Jewish identity, of course, for unfortunate reasons, but feeling connected to each other. We had a vigil with 500 people. And then, of course, there's the campus global board itself. I have been amazed by the amount of activity we've had among our board this week, and the amount of projects and resources being shared with each other, and advice and talking points being drafted and resources being sent. That's been truly amazing to watch, and that has given me a lot of hope and solace as I deal with the grief and other problems here on campus. Oh, and one last thing I will add is this is causing some mental health problems on campus, which is not rocket science to imagine, but that's another problem to be aware of as well.
Thank you, Abe. And you talked about sort of your campus administration's response to this, and I'd love to hear from the rest of our panelists what that has looked like. And Eliza, maybe we could start with you, if you'd like to share.
Yeah, I definitely would. Something that, we have talked about a lot is in our Jewish community here is really the lack of response from our administration. And in talking about it, something that came up is the fact that University of Chicago presidents and key administrators are actually known for not chiming in on what they call geopolitical issues. Now, in my view, they don't need to weigh in on a geopolitical issue. This is an issue of delineating right from wrong, okay from not okay, appalling from anything else, essentially. So essentially what we have had is a statement saying, we feel sorrow about this. we feel sorrow for our students who are connected to the region, and we're offering support in the form of like student wellness and counseling, and of course, travel advisory and the International Office of International Affairs. But in general, it's been very much a non-response. And I think probably the most alarming part for us when it comes to the non-response is, one of the things that's come up is tomorrow being potentially a really dangerous day for Jews around the country, Jews on campus. And I think the fact that, I never would have imagined that anyone in our community, any of our leaders would have hesitated to reassure us that there are certain standards to which students are held in terms of discourse with one another. But also, we go to school in a larger city and we have an open campus. And I think personally, the fact that we have not been reassured that tomorrow our safety will be looked out for is appalling. And I think the last thing I want to touch on is just how difficult, truly difficult it is for our campus to move forward with any type of discourse without any moral leadership from our administration. This is so simple. It really is. And not only are Jews hurting, but the world is hurting as a result of failure to condemn acts of terrorism. It is so simple that the fact that our administration cannot come out and condemn murder and hate and just senseless violence is really setting a tone on our campus that I think not only creates confusion and the potential condemnation of acts, which are of course never okay, but also room for people who are uninformed to actually believe that the false information they're hearing from the likes of SJP and other supporters who are very vocal kind of on the other side of things, believing that information, supporting Hamas, supporting terror is in any way okay. I really think that leaves an opening for the student body to turn an extremely negative direction. I talked about apathy and ignorance, and I think, that's a huge portion of our student body right now, and the school could do a lot to prevent this from becoming a much larger issue just by making a simple statement.
Yeah, that it's astounding that the lack of leadership. At AJC, we've been monitoring closely the statements that have come from university presidents' offices, and when I realized that the University of Chicago had not released any statement, it was truly mind-blowing to me and my colleagues. So we are going to continue to advocate that is done, and it is done swiftly, because you just detailed exactly why it is a major issue. Ryan, how about at American University? What's your campus admin response look like?
Yeah, our university president released a statement a couple of days ago, and it was appalling. It really provided no support for the Jewish students on campus. And after severe, heavy pushback from students, and I would assume from some faculty, and certainly from parents, our president's put out a new statement today calling out Hamas as a terror organization. But it's ridiculous. I mean, this is the bare minimum, right? Like, we shouldn't have to wait for a second statement to come out in order for our administration to understand how this is hurting Jews in Israel and Jews around the world. I'm incredibly grateful, however, the AU community in one circle specifically, I'll chat a little bit about that. Just a couple nights ago, we had a gathering of students and faculty, as well as some of the deans from our colleges, to talk about what was going on, not only in an academic and political sense, but also an emotional sense from our students. And I think that this really I've thought about it a lot this week, and how it's been sort of the bright spot of my week. I think that it allowed me to not only engage my professors, but we had the chair of the board of trustees there of our university. And I was really, really grateful for his support. And also we had the deans of two of our different colleges that were there and providing us reassurance. And I think it's moments like these when the administration might not step up, but there's reassurance from faculty and staff.
Thank you, Ryan. And we've seen a lot of that actually, where the university administration releases a first statement and it's really misses the mark, and then after enough pressure, they release a second statement that is much better. And sometimes it requires even a third try to get it 100% right. But you know, we appreciate seeing steps in the right direction, right? We'll take those as small wins towards getting our message across. Lily, how about it? Northwestern, what's the campus administration response been like there?
So we're kind of in a difficult situation at Northwestern. Many Jewish students were actually not in favor of a statement coming out of concern that it would further anger and embolden anti-Israel students and put Jewish students at risk, which is, I mean, just to say that exemplifies how much of an issue this is, right? And so the president of my university basically stated that he would not be putting out a statement, but instead released a letter that he had written to senior leadership. So it's essentially a statement, but in letter format, in which he says that in his personal capacity as a Jew, he is disgusted by Hamas's actions and condemns the violence. And in this non-statement, he also made clear that it was in his personal capacity that he attended the vigil that we hosted on Monday night to mourn the loss of innocent life in Israel. However, he then goes on to make the distinction that in his role as president of the university, he stands for free speech and he will not be making statements on political, geopolitical, or social issues. And so there's kind of two things at play here, because he's acknowledging in the statement that, you know, he's condemning Hamas, he's condemning their actions, and also admitting that he came to the vigil we held to mourn the loss of Israeli lives. But at the same time, he's really refusing to use his, you know, status as the president of the university to put any sort of power behind that. And there are sort of a couple of different reactions from students on campus. And I think the main one is that he still came out and said that Hamas's actions are unacceptable and appalling. And so that's sort of what we want. But at the same time, without putting the force of like the presidency behind it, it really does feel like empty words. And the students who are already anti-Israel are going to be upset with that statement anyway, because he condemned Hamas at all. So I really don't understand why he couldn't have just gone all the way, put out an actual statement and condemned terrorism, full stop.
I just want to jump in here and piggyback off Lily real quick. You mentioned President Schill being committed to free speech, and I think that's a key issue here with schools like University of Chicago, like Northwestern, that endorse the Chicago principles, which is essentially saying free speech under all circumstances, which is in most cases a great policy. But I think a huge issue right now is we're seeing leadership bastardize the Chicago principles and essentially use them as a shield not to speak out and not to take a stance on what is right and take a position of moral leadership for the benefit of the student body and really for the benefit of our country, for the benefit of the world. These are some of the leading academic institutions on the planet, thought leaders in all academic areas, in research, and the fact that any of these schools would be using the Chicago principles as an excuse not to be making a statement against terror, a simple condemnation, is frankly appalling.
Thank you, Eliza, for adding on there. And I see here we have about 10-15 minutes before we open it up for our audience Q&A section. So I have another question here for you, Abe, about, you know, we've talked a lot about where we are as of right now, but I'm curious what type of strategies you believe can be effective in promoting, a more open and constructive dialogue on this issue at your campus. It feels like everything is extremely siloed right now on campus, and obviously that is counterproductive to being able to have healthy conversations with your classmates. Do you believe there are any strategies that we can deploy to sort of break through?
Yeah, it's a challenging question, Jeff. I think there are some. Before I get there, though, I just want to go back to something Eliza said. Eliza mentioned how Jewish students are feeling scared for tomorrow. And just to give some context for those that aren't aware about what today and tomorrow are. Today was Students for Justice in Palestine's Day of Resistance on college campuses. And tomorrow is Hamas's Day of Rage, when Hamas leaders have called for a global jihad, not just against Israelis, but against all Jews. And the similarity between those 2 days is striking and worrying. I will say to the activists, the Elliot's for Palestine activists on our campus, to their credit, I don't think they are doing anything for Day of Resistance, but it's a major problem, and Jewish students are feeling scared. In an environment like this, how do we get to dialogue, and what does tomorrow look like? I think it's a tough question, Jeff. One principle that I think is important to embrace is, first of all, not to take actions that will be unnecessarily escalatory, and that will escalate without providing any advantage. And second, I think more speech in general is better. For example, last night there were Free Palestine was written on walkways all over campus and similar statements. And there were a lot of Jewish students who wanted to, go follow around the group that was writing these statements and erase them. And I totally understand the urge to do that. I completely understand the urge to do that. But that's the kind of action that I would say, probably doesn't achieve much, and it could escalate things. Instead, what I would recommend, and what I've seen working on this campus, is events where you're sharing the stories of relatives and friends who have been killed, where you're telling the facts of what has happened, op-eds in the student newspaper. That is what needs to happen. And I'm hopeful that as things hopefully calm down a little bit, there will be the possibility for dialogue events as well. Because I firmly believe, and I said this in the Yale campus paper, that campuses should be a place for dialogue. They should be a laboratory for us figuring out how we're going to have peace between Israelis and Palestinians. So I think the more speech we can have towards that effect, and the more we can take down the temperature, the better.
Thank you, Abe. And Ryan, how about at American University? I recall a year or so ago, you had attempted to do a Passover event between Jewish student groups and Muslim student groups. That unfortunately was difficult then, and I can only imagine what it would look like to do today. So, look, AJC is an advocacy organization. We as a Campus Global Board you guys are student leaders trying to convey how important it is to stand in solidarity with your Jewish peers around the world. In a time like this, what do you think are ways that you can really break through the noise? There's so much noise right now. What can, and this really goes to you, Ryan, or Lily, or Eliza, if you'd like to jump in, about just any strategy to sort of break through in this moment. I think it's really important for our audience to hear that from you.
I think it's the one-on-one conversations. It's much easier to sit down and have a conversation with someone as to why I'm a Zionist, why Israel matters to me, and obviously why what Hamas is doing is just abhorrent. I think that I'm able to level with people and have them understand my views, and also I think it's a great opportunity for students who might not have as better of an understanding to ask questions. Oftentimes when we're in groups, we're embarrassed to ask questions, And I think that those moments are really key, whether it's a friend or someone in your class that just isn't aware of what's going on or might be, misinformed. Jeff, I'll touch a little bit about the interfaith work you mentioned. Interfaith work is incredibly important to me. And I think that currently and especially after the war, it's going to be the key to rebuilding relationships on campus. I know that, on AU's campus specifically, as of last week, before the war began, I'm working on a Jewish Christian dialogue on campus, which I'm really excited for. And I think it will be all the more important now with the war going on. And it's my hope that as the war ends, we will be able to rebuild some of these relationships on campus. It's unfortunate that they're breaking down, but I do think there is a little bit of hope there. And I'll add one more thing. I think that in order to have effective dialogue, we need to take care of ourselves first. As Abe mentioned, this has been an awful week for students' mental health, and we can't have these productive conversations with people if we are not taking care of ourselves. And this, I'm saying this to the students on this call, and I'm saying this to the parents on this call. Please reach out to your students. Make sure that they have the support systems that they need on campus. Make sure they're doing things like eating and drinking water. It seems so little, but truly it does make a difference. Unfortunately, I have to hop off. My school is actually hosting a rally right now in support of Israel and against terror. But I truly want to thank all of you so much for being here tonight. And I think that it just shows that college students are making a difference, no matter how sometimes helpless we feel.
Thank you very much, Ryan, for joining, and please go out there and wave your Israeli flag and make us all proud out there in DC. Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yep. Lily, same question to you. Please share any strategies you found that you might be able to deploy.
Yeah, I would love to echo one of Ryan's points there about the importance of these one-off conversations. I think especially right now and among our generation, because social media is so prevalent, it is so easy to just repost a fun, pretty infographic you see and take everything that it says as fact. And I really think that the key to this is getting off social media and having these conversations face to face over social media, whether it's just through story posts or even in Instagram DM conversations with someone. People are often more combative, aggressive, and disrespectful, but when you really have a conversation face to face and are able to see each other's humanity, it's a lot easier to, as Ryan mentioned, ask questions, really get to understand the person's perspective, and hopefully, even if you can't come to agreement, at least find a place of common ground where you can at least, agree to disagree, but respect one another in the process.
Thank you very much, Lily. I think now we've reached the point of the program where we're going to turn it over to our audience questions. So, Chris, I know you've been collecting those. If you could please share with our panelists.
Thank you, Jeff. We have many questions tonight, so we're going to try and combine as many of them as possible in the interest of time. Our first question is, given the so-called Day of Rage tomorrow, what security will be available? Do you feel physically safe on your campus?
I can take this. I think it is probably very much campus to campus. I'm honestly not sure what to expect because we really are in unprecedented times in terms of there being a call for a global day of essentially potentially really harmful acts and essentially terror. From my perspective, I see tomorrow as a huge risk for Jewish students, particularly for openly Jewish students, whether that means wearing a kippah or a Star of David. I think that is a potentially really significant risk depending on what goes on our campus, especially seeing as we have an open campus. As I said, there has not been any communication from the administration about potentially heightened security, which previously there actually has been more of when things have gone on. Security is something that University of Chicago is a huge proponent of. And so I was really quite surprised. And I think, I don't know how unsafe necessarily anyone's feeling quite yet, but I know there's a lot of apprehension about the possibilities for tomorrow.
Thank you, Eliza. Aber, Lily, would you like to answer that one as well?
Sure. So I think I agree. It's campus to campus. In terms of the question of whether I'm feeling unsafe, I definitely am. So one thing I will say is the campus police has done a great job of supporting us here. But I think I speak for myself and a lot of other Jewish students here when I say, we are watching our backs a little bit more. Nothing has happened here, but just today at Columbia, a pro-Israel, a Jewish student was attacked by a student motivated by Hamas and all that's been going on. So people are scared and worried.
Yes, thank you, Abe. I saw that news story as well, and very tragic and problematic. Thank you. And to our audience, just as a reminder, Ryan Kasanoff, who was with us earlier but had to jump off early to go to a exciting rally in DC, attends American University. Abe Baker Butler attends Yale University. Eliza Ross attends the University of Chicago, and Lily Cohen attends Northwestern University for your reference. Lily, did you want to take the question about the day of rage tomorrow and security and how you're feeling about your safety tomorrow?
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a feeling of discomfort on campus among Jewish students, feeling unsettled. But one thing I will say, maybe turning this question a little bit, one thing I've seen that's really inspiring is that a lot of Jewish students on Northwestern's campus are, rather than not wearing their Star of David or not wearing their kippah, are even more resolute in doing that. And there are students who who used to wear a kippah every day, at one point stopped on campus and are now wearing their kippah every day again. There are people who have not put on their Magen David in quite a while and are now wearing it proudly around campus. And so I think that there is definitely some concern about safety, but we're fortunate to have a strong Hillel community. The administration has, at least, in private conversations, been supportive and is kind of aware of these safety concerns going on. And so I think mainly it's just been really inspiring to see how Jewish students are taking that to heart and being more proud than ever to showcase their Judaism.
Absolutely. Thank you, Lily. And shout out to Michael Simon, who I hope if you're watching, phenomenal Hillel director over there at Northwestern. Thank you. Chris, next question.
In your opinion, what role should academic institutions play in fostering a space for informed and respectful discussions on the Israel-Hamas conflict? And how can students advocate for this role?
I can take that one. I think it's an excellent question. I think universities have to be the space for that kind of dialogue. And that could look like university funding or university sponsorship of spaces for those kinds of discussions, but it needs to happen. One thing that has been particularly astounding and worrying to me about these past few days is the willingness that I've seen of people to look past the facts and to ignore the facts of grotesque violence because it doesn't gel with their ideology. That, I think, is a huge problem affecting American campus intellectual life. It is a problem that extends beyond the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And it sends really worrying signs when people are willing to look beyond moral principles because they don't align with their ideology. What does that mean for where our country is headed? So I think, returning to the original question, I think by having those discussions, it creates an opportunity to reinforce the culture we want of facts-based thinking, of morals-based thinking, and of challenging one's own ideology if the facts opposing that ideology show that certain actions taken in support of that ideology are rebuttable.
Just you mentioned facts, and I think that's a super important point to be made. I think this type of conversation gets really complex in an academic environment because of how distorted things have become on this topic, whether it's the demonization of Israel based on entirely false narratives that have been perpetuated by Hamas or other anti-Semitic movements over many years, or it's again utilizing the narrative to fit in with whatever someone's preferred narrative is, whether it's another woke movement or whatever kind of their skew on the situation is. And I think that universities actually have an obligation in these conversations to ensure that these conversations are happening with clarity on what true and real facts are, because if that's not happening at universities, how can we expect that, you know, they're setting the standard in terms from an academic perspective? How can we expect those conversations to happen based on fact anywhere else, if not at an elite academic university and an academic leader in the world? And I think the last thing that I would be remiss not to point out is you know, responsibility to hold professors to a certain standard in that as well. I personally have had experiences, not even around this conflict, you know, in previous years where in classes on Judaism, things have been so incredibly skewed based on someone's personal, not just perception, but their personal beliefs about other things and maybe other sympathies with different causes that tend to align themselves with anti-Zionism.
Thank you, Eliza, for that point. Really, it's so spot on. You know, we've been monitoring extremely biased curriculum for years now at AJC, and it's just seems to be an issue that continues to get worse and worse over time. And you know, one thing that we've been seeing is the coming up of these teach-ins, which are essentially taking national SJP curriculum and having professors and graduate students lead these quote unquote teach-ins where they just spew out propaganda from SJP's playbook. So we're seeing this time and again, and I appreciate you bringing that up very much so. Chris, next question.
How has the recent Israel-Hamas conflict affected your emotional well-being and mental health? What coping strategies or resources have you found helpful during this challenging time?
I can take this one. This has been an incredibly difficult week for me, and I know for a lot of my friends on campus as well. My eyes seem glued to the news, to my social media feeds. It's very, very hard to look away and to take a break. It's very hard to focus on schoolwork, on other work, really on anything other than staying tuned in to what's going on. And I think that this is a trend that I'm seeing across campus with a lot of Jewish students. We just really can't look away. And that's linked to, you know, a fear of, we have friends and family who are there that we're, you know, trying to stay in constant communication with and checking in every day. And, you know, by texting them and asking how they are, what we're really asking is, I just want to make sure you're still alive. And that's really heavy. And that's a lot for college students to be dealing with, while also preparing for midterms and, you know, trying to get their readings done and focus on all this academic work. And so I've been really fortunate that my professors have given me some leniency with that, extending papers that were, I had a paper that was supposed to be due tonight that a professor extended the deadline for me. I was excused from class on Tuesday to attend a rally in solidarity with Israel in the Chicagoland area. And so I've been really fortunate to find that support among, you know, in the academic space on campus, as well as within our Hillel community. There have been students sitting at Hillel at all hours of the day, all week. There have been snacks, there have been meals, and it's been a really great show of support for the Jewish community.
Very encouraging to hear. Thank you, Lily. Abe or Eliza?
I think really Lily hit a lot of key points. I mean, you'll notice I have these flowers to my left. Those are from someone who was trying to cheer me up a bit. I've been trying to spend some time outside, really, as Lily said, to get off of social media and the news, to create spaces, meals, for example, where I'm talking about other things. I think it's important to note that, like, this week, a lot of Jewish students on campuses have been serving almost as grief counselors for each other in a way, and that's a lot. That's very heavy. So for any Jewish students on this, I might say, don't feel guilty about, and it really should not feel guilty about getting off social media or not talking about this for a bit. You need to put your well-being first.
I think Lily and Abe have really touched on it all. I do want to point out I think the emotional weight of this for all of us as individuals has been so great, whether you have family and a lot of close friends there or not. I think this is a time when people are actually feeling, Jewish people are feeling significantly more affinity for people in Israel than ever before, whether or not they know them. And so every loss and every injury and every new development is 10 times heavier and 10 times more emotional than things that have gone on in Israel in the past have been. And I think probably the biggest thing to lean on has been the Jewish community here gathering together, whether it's for a vigil or, as Lily and Abe said, seeking out community in those Jewish spaces has just been enormously, enormously helpful.
Thank you all very much. Chris.
Thank you, Jeff. We have time for one last question, which is, what advice would you give high schoolers or first-year students who want to get involved? And how would you advise college-bound high school students to consider which colleges to apply for and how to evaluate colleges on their list?
I'd love to jump in here. I think one of the best things that high school students can do, I'll definitely plug AJC Leaders for Tomorrow. Not only is it an incredible program, but it really does prepare you with some of the seminal knowledge that I think any person going onto a college campus or going into their life, any Jewish person should really have. But in addition to that, educating oneself in high school, I know that can be really hard because you're still in this phase of being in school from 9 to 4 every single day and having homework. But I think any opportunity to learn and be informed about what's going on in Israel and with the Jewish people, as well as our history and why we're so connected to Israel, is really key knowledge for not only being able to speak up, but being able to feel comfortable on your campus. Knowing why we are so steadfast in our beliefs is something that for me has helped enormously. And I know for others who also have this knowledge has helped them enormously, not only in speaking up, but just feeling comfortable in our shoes, in our beliefs. In terms of colleges, I think it's really, really tough because, of course, high school students need to find schools that work for them. But there is so much information now coming out on different campuses about anti-Semitism, dwindling Jewish populations, what have you, across the curriculum that might be anti-Semitic, specifically anti-Zionist. And I think being aware of that is really important in the college process, but ultimately we belong on every college campus. So if you want to go to a school, you should absolutely go there. Just be prepared for whatever might come your way there and build your voice with education, with communities like AJC, and basically find your Jewish community, find your niche so that when and if it's needed, you're able to speak out.
Yeah, I am a proud Leaders for Tomorrow, AJC Leaders for Tomorrow alum. I actually, I think that's really helped empower me to get through these very dark days. I would be remiss if I did not talk about the immense impact AJC is having on campus through its Campus Global Board, and the importance of the Campus Global Board to me and all of us on this call. I'd say, if you're a rising college student, make sure to apply to the Campus Global Board, because it is a truly amazing group, a support group, but also a group that's taking action on campus to make things better. And in terms of choosing what campus you go to, I echo what Eliza said. I also think the Hillel student guide in terms of Jewish population can be very good. And when you're on campus, you should ask, you should have genuine conversations with staff and students. Just walking to the Hillel, you'll get a pretty good sense of what things are like.
I agree with both Abe and Eliza wholeheartedly. And I also think for students who are already on campus, my biggest piece of advice would be that I think the biggest defense that we as a Jewish community have against anti-Semitism and against this really awful rhetoric and these awful actions that we're seeing from so many students on campuses right now is our unity. Their biggest nightmare is seeing Jews stand together and be loudly and proudly Jewish. And so I encourage you to stand with your community, to wear your Magen David, wear your kippah, and continue to be proud and stand together with your Jewish peers.
Thank you. Well, Lily, Eliza, Abe, and Ryan, who is now at a rally, thank you all so much for joining. I hope that the audience this evening and wherever you are around the world has been able to hear from these students really the full picture of what's happening on campus. You know, we get a lot of information from social media and from mainstream media and from all different parts of from all different types of voices, but these students are the ones who are living on campus, and it is important. I cannot thank you three enough for being here and sharing with us. It's so critically important for our work. I also, as the director of campus affairs, want to share with the audience that a large part of why I'm able to do what I do and why AJC professionals are able to do what we do is because of the fact that we know that the next generation is really in phenomenal hands, and you've seen it showcased tonight. These are some of the sharpest students you will ever find in any university at any place in the world. And our campus global board is made up of, there's 30 more that are just as sharp and as bright as these four that you saw tonight. And for all the students out there that would like to get involved, please message me after this meeting. Would love to talk with you more about it because, like Abe said, it is a true mishpacha, a true family, and we are looking to grow that family. So thank you. So Chris, kicking it back over to you and sending my love and light to our entire audience. We're in this together.
Thank you, Abe, Lily, Ryan, and Eliza for sharing your stories with us. And thank you to our global audience for tuning in tonight. If we were unable to answer your question live, please email us at campus@ajc.org with additional questions, and someone will reply when able. To stay up to date on the evolving situation, make sure to follow AJC on social media. We also encourage you to visit our website at ajc.org/attack-on-Israel, where you can find informative resources, ways to take action, and information on how to donate to AJC's Israel Emergency Campaign. You can also send a message of love and support to Israel at ajc.org/loveisrael. We continue to stand in solidarity with Israel today and every day. Israel Chai. Thank you again and goodbye.